Holy cow, we just finished the Q2 earnings call for Lucid Motors. And to be honest, I was going into this call expecting to be slightly disappointed because I immediately read the top line numbers that we had missed margin. And I was like, what is management doing? We're losing the plot. But after listening to the earnings call and listening to this new set of management, I was pleasantly surprised. And I want to go ahead and tell you guys why. Their deliveries were up 38% year over year. Honestly, as somebody that pays attention to companies closely, I don't really care about the year over year numbers. So much changes in a year. I'm really focused on the quarter over quarter numbers. They talked about the tariff negative gross margins, and I saw a lot of headlines saying, Lucid's margins were down. And I was one of them, right? I was like, hey, Lucid's margins are down. This can't be good. I said I wanted 3 things for Lucid to focus on. And they actually hit 2 out of my 3 things on this call. So stick around because I'll explain it. He said, of course, they said on July 17th, they talked about their partnership with Neuro. That was a big success. And he says they take the comfort, safety, and scale of Gravity, Neuro L4, level 4 autonomy, and then the Uber network. I thought it was kind of a nice play on words. Timothy Chalamet is going to start an advertising campaign for Lucid in September. I apologize. This isn't time for football season. Lucid has run Gravity commercials during football season, Super Bowl season in the past. So it must be successful. I do expect some of they're probably going to spend a lot of money on SG&A going into Q3, Q4. But let's keep going. So he's like, the CEO, Mark, said, hey, we're going to we focus on 3 things: operational, discipline, scalable brand, and something about technology. It was really hard to hear him. I had to rewind it like 3 times and I still didn't get it. Anyways, he said that they ran into the supply chain, and I literally wrote again on my notes because I'm like, oh, here we go again, another excuse about supply chains. But I want to keep going into it because this call actually surprised me. I believe it was their CFO who was talking that really caught my ear. So they had supply chain issues, they overcame those, and they started talking about magnets. And I've been following the company for I followed it for a few years. I took a break and I kind of jumped back into it the last couple of months. And they had this issue. They had some issues with batteries. Apparently, it was a big deal. The CEO later clarifies that they worked their magic. The engineers did, and they fixed it. They said that they're going to continue to ramp up Gravity production. And there's a few tidbits in here that I have not seen anybody talk about yet. But he said they're going to ramp up production. The second half of the year volume is going to increase significantly. And he says that they've already worked with suppliers to alleviate any issues they've had for the second half of 2025. And the manufacturing changes that they needed to make only took weeks instead of months because they're vertically integrated. Nice to hear, putting those factories to use. This is when he started talking about magnets, and I was like, question mark. Like, was it that big of a deal? Apparently it was. They talked about their battery plant opening up in 2006. Sorry, not 2006, 2026. I apologize. It's been a long day. And he said they're going to work on amplifying the brand, world-class athletes, creator, ADOS athletes. He talked about the new battery changes that they've made, and they are now able to get 431 miles per battery charge. And it used to be 406, I think, and it was a 25-mile delta. My thought is, how much R&D, how much time, how much expense went into that 25-mile delta? And was that cost of that 25 miles was it worth it? Because after 400 miles, there's not really an excuse for range anxiety, especially with the Tesla chargers open. So I don't really know if I 100% agree with them pushing the envelope to get the extra 25 miles to get 431 miles of range. Yeah, it caught some headlines for a few days, but I don't know how many more cars it sold. I could be wrong though. This is the part that really caught my attention. He talked about the $54 million of impact from tariffs, and I was a little unclear how impactful that really was. But he said that they were 21. This was a 21 percentage point decrease in gross margin. Now, I want to show you guys something really interesting. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. This actually surprised me. As somebody that pays attention to the company, this genuinely surprised me. So right here, they're displaying their gross margins. And this has been something that I've been like pounding on the tables for a long time, that people need to focus on their gross, like the Lucid needs to focus on their gross margins, because until they're profitable per car, this company is going to be going through the dumps. Okay. And so their CFO started talking about margins. I was like, whoa, like it's been a few quarters since I've been on a Lucid earnings call, but I've never heard them talk about margins this way. This was impressive. So obviously in Q4 of 2024, they had negative 89%. This was their best margin quarter, which I'd actually wish I'd highlighted that earlier in some of my earlier videos, but I'm glad we have this now. And then in Q1 2025, they had negative 97%. Okay. Now, this was my disappointment. I calculated as soon as the numbers dropped, I'm like, what was our gross margins? Was it better than the last quarter? And unfortunately, it hit negative 105. But here's the interesting thing. The CFO, I think it's the CFO. We're going to call him the CFO. If he's not, somebody correct me down in the comments. But the CFO said that the gross margin had an impact of 21 percentage points. Okay. So if I just do some simple math and I do 105 minus 21, that gives us an 84% gross margin. So without tariffs, Lucid was on track to have their best quarter so far for gross margins. Now we're still negative gross margins, but it would have been their best quarter so far for gross margins, unless I'm missing something. But that, from what I can tell, it would have been their best quarter had it not been for tariffs. So am I throwing in the towel that Lucid gave up on their gross margins? No, not yet. Okay, you still saw their negative EBITDA get kind of whacked. I don't have a ton behind that. You saw their revenue get whacked. I think they said there was a that was for a different expense. Well, never mind, forget that. Anyways, the revenue didn't get whacked. It's up slightly. It's the best revenue that they've had. They delivered the most cars. It should be. But once we start to see these gross margins go up, I think that you'll start to see a narrative shift in the company. Now, obviously, they have their three things. They're focused on discipline, brand execution with Timothy Chalamet, and I think this will actually be an interesting ad campaign to have during football season. And then they have their extended technology leadership. That you can see their deliveries here, where they're incrementally getting better every quarter. Their production was ahead of their deliveries. And then you can see them talk about the magnet issue that right here in this last bullet point. It's crazy that such a technical thing made it into like the earnings call. It was funny. Okay, back to my notes. I don't want to scroll through the slide deck for you guys because I have some other interesting thoughts. Anyways, so I put in my notes margins 3 exclamation marks. Yes, finally they're talking about margins because I hadn't heard on a Lucid earnings call for a long time somebody emphasizing margins. And he said that they're spending their R&D on the midsize platform. Like, great, we're talking about it. And he said that they were forecasting 8 to 15% margin headwind earlier this quarter, but now it looks like it'll be only an 8% headwind. He said, to put it in his words, towards the lower end of the 8 to 15% margin range. So that was good news that margins are going to be better than feared. Margins are going to be better than they thought the tariffs were going to impact them. The tariffs aren't going to impact the margins as badly as they initially thought. There we go. Okay, let's keep going. So they talked about the tax credit is ending in Q4 of this year. He said they have countermeasures for this. They didn't talk about it yet, but he talked about. They also talked about how important the mid-size platform is because it'll leverage the adjustable market. It'll let them use their technology and it'll let them go more mainstream. I thought this was brilliant. So I'm like, wow, they hit. Because usually I got onto the earnings calls and I would have like this wish list. I'm like, okay, I want Lucid to do these 3 things on the earnings call. And it would never happen almost, or they would say something that went against my wish list. But I had 3 things. I wanted them to talk about margins and work on it. Well, I wanted them to beat, but the fact that they talked about it kind of made up for it a little bit because they didn't used to talk about it. And then I wanted them to go heavy on the mid-size platform, which it looks like they are. They talked about it for a good portion of this call. And then I wanted them to fill the voids in the market. And they didn't, but that was kind of a stretch anyways. Voids in the market, meaning like a big van, like a Sprinter style van, but I'll leave that alone. Okay, so they said that they're only going to give production guidance as a range going forward. I think they've shot themselves in the foot too many times saying a specific number and then getting close to it, but then still being punished for it. So they revised their guidance from 20,000 to 18 to 20,000, if that makes sense. Okay, so then they jumped into the questions, and we talked about this a few days ago in my pre-earnings call video, which was funny to hear these questions again. One of the questions was, how many gravity orders are there? And he said, we won't disclose this, but we have a high conversion rate, and we're happy with what we're seeing with conversion rate. He said, we are supply constraint, not demand constraint. Obviously, that's something good to hear as an investor. Okay. He said, the mid-size, and then somebody asked, when will are you going to do deliveries in 2026? And he said, well, we're going to unveil the mid-size platform in 2026, and we're going to do deliveries in 2027. So a couple more years. And then the question continued on, asking if the nickel factories made a difference in the speed of the ramp of the mid-size platform. And he said it doesn't change the ramp time at all. And he says Then he talked about the partnership with Uber and Nuro. They didn't get into any specifics about like revenue sharing, so I don't anticipate it. He talked about Uber's stock infusion, the investment infusion, as well as the car purchase. So I don't think that they're going to do any kind of revenue split, which is fine. One of the analysts, so then after the say.com questions from retail, they went to the analyst questions, and they said that the midsize they said that even though one of the analysts kept like, is the current macro going to change? Is the current macro condition going to change the price of the ASP, the average selling price of the midsize platform? And they said no change. I think they'll probably introduce it from the $40,000 to $60,000 range. That's where they're going to introduce it. They're probably going to start on the high end of that range, the 60,000 trim, and go down. That's my guess. Until we learn more, that's my guess. I said if they want to blow everybody's socks off, they should just go for like 35K and address that void that Tesla has of like a $25,000 to $35,000 car. But you can get like a used Model 3 for 25 to 35K. So they've kind of already filled that void. But whatever. I think that they could grab a lot of headlines for a long time if they introduced a super cheap car, because you have people that are wanting that cheap car, especially with Lucid's battery technology. Range anxiety and price anxiety could be a good solution, but their margins would get hammered on that car. I strongly think that it would cost a lot more to make. I would love to be surprised. Maybe they have a trick up their sleeve. I would love that. Okay. He said that the licensing, they still are in talks for licensing agreements. And I just kept, he went on for this for a while. I was like, blah, blah, blah in my notes. And I said, this would be a really funny opportunity if Lucid announced I don't think they will because of Nuro, but if they announced an FSD partnership with Tesla, like Lucid that would be a really good fit for Lucid if they licensed Tesla's FSD. So if you were to integrate Lucid with FSD, I think that'd be a great recipe. And I think that almost Tesla, I don't know if Tesla would even say yes to that because I think it'd be so crazy. They talked about that Atlas powertrain. They said it's on track. And they said there was this vicious rumor going around. One of the analysts brought it up. He said there was a vicious rumor going around about there was no deliveries for the Gravity in July. And the CEO said this is false. It's not true. And it's a shame that somebody would publish something like that. And he said, this was one of the most interesting things to hear. He said majority of our deliveries in the second half of this year will be the Gravity. Now this, in my opinion, I could be wrong. This is obviously their largest margin car. This is the car with the best margins on it. And the fact that they have a ton of demand for it that outweighs the supply, I think this is going to be a very good margin boost for them. I think we should expect to see an improvement in margins in Q3, Q4. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. I think if he is accurate, I haven't seen anybody else talk about this. If he is accurate in saying that the Gravities will be majority of their deliveries in Q3 and Q4, I think margins will look a lot better. Hopefully we can get to the negative 50% like plus in terms of like plus going to zero margins. That would be insane. And I think that you'd actually start to see people like, whoa, what is Lucid doing? Wait, they're doing a mid-sized car now. They're doing a Model Y competitor. What? So I think you would see a lot of heads turn if they can start to get margins going that way. They talked about the magnet problem again for a while. They kind of got technical with it. They said somebody asked them to go through like the mid-sized platform milestones. He's like, well, we're sourcing the parts, then we're doing product validation and builds, then we're doing like real world validation with like winter and etc. He said we're on track to unveil it at the end of 2026. So I was pleasantly surprised for a few reasons. One, they openly addressed margins. They told us how much tariffs impacted margin, and it would have been one of their best quarters had it not been for tariffs. This is great. This is obviously tariffs, you can't ignore them. They're here, but we're going to see like an 8% impact. So I think he said the delta was 21%. So let's think about this. Okay, hold on. I'm thinking about this in real time. Let me go ahead and continue to share the screen with you guys. Let me go back up to this margin chart because this is really interesting. So obviously he said their margins were impacted 21%. So 105 minus 21 is 84. Now they said that they're probably going to have they said 8 to 15% margin headwind, but they think it's going to be towards the lower end of that. So let's what's the difference between 8 and 15? 15 minus 8. Let's do 15 plus 8. Come on, find the average. 15 plus 8 divided by 2. 15 plus 8 is 23. 23 divided by 2 is not 12. 23 divided by 2 is 11.5. Okay, I could have done that in my head. It was just, I was thinking about margins, not about math. Okay, so let's just say 12. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say 12. So 105 minus 21 is 84. So let's do 84 plus 12. Their margins are probably going to, if I had to take a rough guess, their margins are going to come in at a negative 96% margin or better. If they can beat their Q4 2024 margin, that would be amazing. They didn't have tariffs then. So if they could beat that, that would be incredible. This is going to be the number that I'm most focused on and the one that I'm most paying attention to. And if they're delivering mostly gravities and they only have an 8 to 12% headwind, that's really good. And if it's only if we take the extreme low end of that and say it's only an 8% headwind, then it could be negative 92. Lucid could be on pace for the best quarter ever of margins. So this, I wasn't expecting this. When I saw the headline, I was, ugh, classic Lucid. They're missing again. But I'm actually impressed by the CFO, the CEO. He does his job. He goes on Bloomberg. He goes on CNBC more than I've seen the previous CEO. And the CFO really did good. He addressed my concerns about margins and I wanted to hear about tariffs and the impact of it. So I know that people are going to be pissed and say like, hey, this was not a good earnings call. Lucid missed, stocks down, 8%? But I think they actually have, like, so much about business is getting the right people on the bus. And I think Lucid might actually have the right executive staff to continue to have this company go forward. Again, this is just a guy on YouTube that likes to listen to earnings calls, read slide decks, and create spreadsheets. That's all I am. Okay. Nothing more than that. So this should not be, I am personally not buying more shares because of this. I will let you guys know if I do. I'm not changing any of my investment strategies. This is not a solicitation to buy or sell any security of any type whatsoever. This is just for entertainment purposes only. So watch this video as such. But I really enjoyed this earnings call. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I am pleasantly surprised. And I don't think I've ever said that about a Lucid earnings call before. And I've been following Lucid since 2022. I followed them since their CCIV days. Okay. I have this like tough love relationship with Lucid because I want to see them succeed. But some of the things that they did previously, I just did not agree with. But I finally think, although they're not profitable, they're a long ways away from it. Although they don't have positive gross margins yet, I am starting to think the ship is starting to sail the right direction. And I think that's one of the first times I've said that about Lucid. I'm pleasantly surprised. I did not think I was going to say that tonight. So we're going to see, because if Timothée Chalamet starts selling gravities, they better sign that boy up for a longer contract because, hey, whatever it takes. Cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my analysis. I don't think you guys were expecting me to have kind of such a positive I don't think you guys expected me to have such a positive outlook on this. So if you guys enjoyed my perspective, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. The best compliment you can give me is just watch my videos for as long as you can. That's the best thing you can do is watch my videos all the way through. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time. Have a good night.